Picture this: a woman worth millions, once celebrated as the vivacious redhead who captivated the monarchy, is now living covertly in a £2,000 per night luxury flat, hidden in the Austrian Alps, desperately trying to remain invisible to the world. But here's where the story takes its most troubling turn. After nearly 213 days of complete disappearance from public view, when photographs finally emerged of Sarah Ferguson at the Mayor Life Wellness Spa complex near Salzburg, her carefully constructed sanctuary collapsed in an instant. The location wasn't some small-scale mountain cottage designed for quiet reflection. This was an opulent medical retreat renowned throughout Europe for its extraordinary treatment options, its ironclad commitment to absolute secrecy, and its exclusive clientele of wealthy international visitors seeking the kind of discretion that only money can buy. Her private residential suite reportedly cost roughly £2,000 each night, which accumulated to over £14,000 per week, a staggering financial commitment that immediately raised a critical question among royal observers worldwide. When someone who has spent years battling persistent rumors about their financial stability suddenly appears to be living in such luxury, yet a few weeks later begins reaching out to wealthy friends and acquaintances for places to stay, the mathematics of the situation begins to feel deeply inconsistent. Reports from multiple sources paint a picture of someone who wasn't engaging in typical spa guest activities. She wasn't walking through the resort's public areas, didn't visit the pools, and actively avoided any interaction with other guests. Instead, she remained almost entirely secluded within her private apartment, ordering room service for her meals, and deliberately maintaining a profile so low that it bordered on complete invisibility. For months, this strategy worked perfectly. Her location remained a secret, her retreat remained a sanctuary, and her privacy seemed genuinely protected. That is, until the photographs appeared. The moment her image circulated through tabloid networks and social media channels, that meticulously constructed refuge became compromised beyond repair. According to reports, Sarah quickly began contacting friends and professional associates, urgently requesting their assistance in finding alternative accommodations. One source close to the situation offered this telling commentary: "Sarah will never be without a place to go because she has good friends and people who know her are genuinely delighted to help her." That statement, while perhaps well-intentioned and reflective of genuine affection from her inner circle, reveals something far more troubling about her current circumstances. When your housing security depends entirely on the generosity of friends, when you must reach out and ask for help rather than simply moving into properties you've already secured and paid for yourself, it speaks volumes about the instability lurking beneath any surface appearance of stability. The situation becomes even more layered and fascinating when you consider what this retreat in Austria actually meant to Sarah Ferguson, beyond its material amenities. In 2023, following her cancer diagnosis, she had spent an extended period at this very same spa facility, and her experience had moved her so deeply that she recorded an official promotional video for the resort. Her language in that video wasn't the typical boilerplate endorsement you'd expect from a celebrity guest. Instead, she spoke with genuine emotional resonance about having found something far more profound than excellent spa treatments and medical care. She described it as a safe environment, a true sanctuary, and most remarkably, she said it was perhaps one of the only places anywhere in the world where she could simply be Sarah, free from the weight of titles, untethered from the complications of her surname, and released from the relentless pressure of public expectations and constant scrutiny. Those words carried tremendous weight and meaning. They suggested that this location had transcended its function as a wellness facility and had become something deeply personal, a refuge not merely from the tabloids and paparazzi, but from the suffocating burden and oppressive psychological weight that has defined her entire public existence. Yet herein lies the profound paradox that drives this entire narrative. Sanctuaries, by their very nature, can only function as sanctuaries when they maintain their fundamental quality of obscurity and privacy. The moment a sanctuary becomes visible, becomes known, becomes photographed and broadcast across the internet and magazine pages, it ceases to be a sanctuary at all. When her location was exposed and images began circulating through media channels, her ability to remain at the facility reportedly vanished alongside her privacy. The sanctuary had been shattered, not by any violation of the facility's standards or security measures, but simply through the inevitable collision between her desire for invisibility and the modern reality of constant surveillance and image distribution. This brings us to the crucial question that has occupied the attention of royal observers and analysts since these revelations surfaced. Where exactly did the money come from? Despite the numerous business ventures, book deals, television appearances, and media contracts that Sarah Ferguson has pursued throughout her career since her divorce from Prince Andrew, her financial situation has remained a perennially murky and complicated subject. She has experienced highly publicized financial difficulties, accumulated substantial debts, and faced considerable criticism regarding her lifestyle choices and spending patterns. When rumors emerged that she had been living in a £14,000 weekly suite at a luxury alpine retreat, questions naturally arose about whether her personal financial resources had finally begun to run dry. This mystery deepened substantially when she abruptly departed from the facility and began reaching out to wealthy acquaintances for housing assistance. Royal analyst Tom Sykes, writing in the Daily Beast, offered a particularly incisive observation about this financial puzzle. According to Sykes, it stretches credulity to imagine that Sarah Ferguson was personally funding this complete Austrian spa vacation entirely with her own resources. That statement resonated powerfully with numerous observers because it crystallized a suspicion that many had already begun to harbor privately. Sykes further noted that rumors were circulating within royal circles about potential lucrative opportunities, possibly a memoir or tell-all project that might generate substantial financial compensation. If these claims prove accurate, they would align perfectly with a recurring pattern throughout Sarah's career. Whenever she faces significant public controversy or financial pressure, new speculation inevitably surfaces regarding possible memoir deals, interviews, or other income-generating endeavors. Sarah Ferguson has consistently demonstrated herself to be remarkably media-savvy, far more willing than most members of the royal family to discuss her experiences publicly, to reinvent herself strategically, and to actively maintain a prominent position within the cultural conversation. Some observers admire what they perceive as extraordinary resilience and adaptability, while others view her approach with considerably more skepticism. Regardless of one's perspective, her fundamental survival strategy has remained consistent. Through crisis after scandal, she has persisted by remaining visible, engaging with media, and continuing to generate fresh stories about herself that keep her relevant and newsworthy. But the current chapter of her life is unfolding under circumstances that are profoundly different from her previous controversies. The renewed scrutiny of her historical connections to Jeffrey Epstein has created a situation of far greater severity and reputational damage than almost anything she has previously endured. In late January, the United States Department of Justice released a comprehensive document that included newly detailed information about her past association with Epstein. According to extensive analyses published by major news outlets examining this released material, the documents included emails in which she specifically apologized to Epstein and referred to him as her supreme friend. The specific language triggered genuine outrage on social media and in media circles throughout the world. Some reports indicated that she had visited Epstein along with Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie in 2010, shortly after Epstein's release from a Florida prison. It is critically important to emphasize, and several publications addressing these matters have made this clear, that Sarah engaged in no illegality through these emails and committed no crimes. However, the relationship between legal innocence and reputational damage operates on an entirely different plane. The modern media landscape moves with such extraordinary speed that narrative often outpaces careful legal analysis and nuanced understanding. Measured investigation takes time, but outrage spreads instantaneously. The resulting reputational impact appears to have been substantial and far-reaching. According to multiple reports, Sarah was subsequently severed from organizational affiliations with several prominent charitable organizations, including Julius House, the British Heart Foundation, the Children's Literacy Charity, Prevent Breast Cancer, and the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation. That represents a truly significant list of lost connections and lost platforms. Charitable organizations typically operate with extraordinary caution when managing reputational matters, because they understand implicitly that their reputation is their most valuable asset. When controversy becomes too prominent to ignore or overlook, they typically move with remarkable speed to distance themselves. Beyond these organizational losses, Sarah was also stripped of the title Freedom of the City of York, following a unanimous decision by city councilors to revoke it. While that might appear to be merely symbolic, in the context of royal life, symbols carry profound meaning and weight. Titles, honors, patronages, charitable associations, and public affiliations constitute the fundamental currency through which royal status is measured and communicated. When these designations begin to disappear one after another from your public record, the message about your current standing and how you are perceived by institutions becomes unmistakably clear. There exists another dimension to this situation that extends beyond its public and institutional aspects, something far more intimate and personally significant. According to reports, Sarah maintains close and regular communication with both of her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and both have apparently expressed serious concerns about the potential emotional and psychological effects of these recent developments on their well-being. That particular detail deserves careful consideration, because beneath all the headlines, rumors, speculation, and tabloid conjecture, there exists a functioning family attempting to navigate significant public humiliation and reputational devastation, while living under unrelenting international scrutiny. Throughout their mother's extensive history of controversy, public criticism, and media attention, both Beatrice and Eugenie have consistently demonstrated public support for her. Regardless of circumstance or severity of scandal, they have presented a united family front, and that loyalty appears to remain steadfast and unchanged. The emotional support and devotion of her daughters may indeed prove more valuable than any amount of financial resources. If Sarah is currently moving quietly and discreetly between the homes and residences of reliable acquaintances, while intentionally avoiding public view. However, royal observers have begun noticing something conspicuous by its absence from this entire narrative, and that absence raises questions in itself. Where is Prince Andrew? Despite their divorce many years ago, Sarah and Andrew have maintained their famously close relationship. They have lived together at various points in time, openly supported one another through different controversies, and maintained one of the most unusual and unconventional post-divorce relationships in contemporary royal history. Tabloids and observers made jokes for years about them being the divorced couple who never truly separated. Given this history of proximity and mutual support, when reports suggest that Sarah is depending on the hospitality and generosity of friends for housing, some observers have naturally begun wondering why Prince Andrew hasn't emerged as the obvious and natural solution, the refuge she could presumably seek, given their enduring closeness. This particular question goes unaddressed in the available reports, and this lack of clarification adds another layer of intrigue and mystery to an already unusual and complex story. The reports also include another detail worthy of attention and consideration. According to multiple sources, since December of the previous year, Sarah has been traveling through different regions of Europe, and her most recent confirmed public appearance in the United Kingdom was during her granddaughter Athena's christening. That particular detail creates a specific and rather poignant mental image of someone living in deliberate seclusion, traveling covertly through Europe, and maintaining substantial distance from cameras and public documentation. She is not establishing herself in a stable residential situation. She is not returning to her previous routines and public appearances, and she is not confidently resuming the royal functions and social engagements that once characterized her life. Rather, the available evidence suggests that she is moving silently and deliberately from one concealed location to another, traveling between safe houses and the residences of people she trusts, maintaining invisibility, as though her very livelihood depended upon remaining unseen. The sharp contrast between this current image and the woman many people remember from the earlier decades of her life could hardly be more striking. She once dominated front pages and headlines. Yes, but for entirely different reasons. She was the vivacious, charismatic redhead who married into the monarchy, captivated audiences through sheer force of personality, deliberately and often provocatively disregarded royal conventions and customs, and subsequently built an entirely different career and identity for herself by authoring numerous books, appearing on television programs, and leveraging her distinctive personality and unique perspective. She was frequently provocative, sometimes irreverent, but she was never invisible, never forgettable, and never deliberately attempting to fade into obscurity. The narrative surrounding her has now transformed into something far darker and more troubling. According to reports, the woman who once actively welcomed and courted media attention is now actively avoiding it. The woman who once built her financial security and income by monetizing her story and selling access to her narrative now finds herself potentially desperate for another compelling story to tell. Additionally, the woman who once openly called an alpine hideaway her haven, her sanctuary, her refuge from all the burdens of her public life, has reportedly been compelled to leave that place entirely. That represents a rather extraordinary reversal of fortune and circumstance. Of course, it remains appropriate and necessary to maintain a reasonable level of skepticism about specific claims and details, because it is fair to acknowledge that many of the particular assertions circulating through tabloid publications are ultimately based on unnamed sources and unverified reporting. The precise details of her financial circumstances, her exact itinerary, and the current specifics of her living arrangements have not been fully and independently confirmed by either Sarah or her official representatives. Even accounting for appropriate caution and healthy skepticism, however, the overall picture that emerges is genuinely difficult to ignore or dismiss entirely. Sarah Ferguson appears to be navigating one of the most challenging and difficult periods of her entire public life. Her reputation has unquestionably suffered another significant setback. That much is clear. One by one, the various charitable roles and organizational affiliations she cultivated are reportedly vanishing. Financial security and money-related concerns have resurfaced with renewed intensity and urgency. Additionally, the seclusion, privacy, and sanctuary she sought in Austria have been destroyed and rendered impossible. Which brings us inevitably to the most pressing and logical question of all: what actually happens next? Does she attempt a comeback through a carefully orchestrated interview, a long-awaited memoir, or some calculated effort to restore her reputation and financial security? Does she choose to retreat into the background, supported quietly by the generosity of her family and friends, progressively disappearing from the public consciousness until she fades into relative obscurity? Or have we actually reached the final chapter of Sarah Ferguson's career as a public figure, a point where all the glitter has vanished and only the unglamorous work of reputation management and damage control remains? Generally speaking, it would be foolish to categorically rule out the possibility of another reinvention with Sarah Ferguson, because she has genuinely surprised people before with her fortitude, resilience, and capacity to adapt to changing circumstances. However, all currently available evidence does not suggest a woman engaged in reinvention, but rather someone who is retreating, withdrawing, and pulling away from public life. For someone who spent decades fighting to remain relevant, visible, and to keep her story in constant circulation within the public eye, this apparent retreat into invisibility may represent the most telling and significant development of all. So what are your thoughts on Sarah Ferguson's situation? Is she simply remaining quiet and low profile, hoping that the current storm of negative attention will eventually pass and fade from media coverage? Or have her financial resources and available options finally begun to genuinely run out? Please share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below, because I'd genuinely like to hear what you think about this unfolding situation. If you enjoy staying up to date on royal news and don't want to miss the latest events and surprising developments in this realm, please consider subscribing to this channel before you leave, because new stories and unexpected turns emerge constantly in the world of royalty, and you definitely won't want to miss what happens next.